Hey everybody, it's PartyElite, and with the Steam Autumn Sale kicking off, it's time to dive in and pick out some of the great deals that are actually worth the price tag on offer. As always, my focus remains on strategic and tactical games, including city builders, 4X games, GSGs, real-time strategy, and more. If you have any recommendations of your own for games in these genres, please don't hesitate to drop them in the comments below, and if this video helps you find a game you like, consider hitting the like button. Now, with timestamps down below and no more time to waste, let's begin.
The Last Spell is currently 50% off, available for just $12.
And if you're looking for an addictive roguelite tower defense game with a beautiful art style, tons of replayability, ample challenge, and an amazing soundtrack, this is definitely worth picking up. Having released into 1.0 last year after spending some time in early access, The Last Spell has a simple plot hook in a dark fantasy setting that has you protecting mages located in the middle of your settlement, casting the titular last spell in an effort to save the world from monsters spawned from magic. You need to build up your defensive structures and upgrade your settlement during the day to help acquire resources that'll directly impact your performance when the attacks begin at night. Your hero's various abilities, paired with positioning and equipment, all come together alongside your accomplishments during the day to hold back the onslaught at night, with turn-based, grid-based tactical combat asking you to keep an eye out for synergistic abilities as you manage action points and mana between your heroes. Naturally, this being a roguelite, you're expected to fail from time to time, but that only unlocks new abilities and opportunities to explore. The game is an absolute blast, and I can definitely recommend it at this price point, especially with the recent roadmap that announced the devs' plans to release DLC alongside major free updates throughout 2025. This one's well worth picking up.
Distant Worlds 2 is currently 50% off, available for just about $25.
And it's an absolute steal at this price. If you're a fan of extremely complex, real-time sci-fi 4X games spread across the vast expanse of space, look no further than this. A game where you can opt to start as a pre-faster-than-light civilization, slowly crawling around moons and planets near your home to start with, before you eventually research more advanced technologies, upgrade your ships, and open up the universe. The maps are absolutely massive. There's a huge variety of resource types, exploration plays a major role in the game, and uniquely, the game features a two-tiered economic system between the privately owned and the publicly operated. While you control the latter directly, the former grows from decisions you make, establishing tourist destinations on luxury planets or developing mining operations in pursuit of lucrative resources that you can then buy and use to power your military or political capabilities. Ships can be customized to reflect what resources are available to you through your exploits, or they can be designed to counteract a specific threat with a huge variety of modules available, each with detailed attributes that impact their use and value. Fortunately, the game allows you to automate or take manual control over the various aspects from ship customization to colonial expansion to economic growth in a very detailed fashion, meaning you can choose exactly what falls under your purview versus the AI, making it very easy to slowly get familiar with the many moving parts it has to offer. Distant Worlds 2 is a sci-fi 4X unlike any other, and it's seen significant improvements since launch. At this price, I can definitely recommend picking it up and taking it for a spin if you're a fan of strategy games that aren't afraid to throw you into the deep end especially. WARNO is currently 33% off, available for just about $25, and if you're a fan of modern warfare RTS games, this one's a must-buy. From the folks that brought us the Steel Division games and the War Game series, both things you'll hear me recommend repeatedly, comes a game set during an alternate history World War III where the Cold War has turned hot. The game is visually stunning, featuring absolutely massive battlefields that you can zoom into to watch individual tanks and infantrymen duke it out, quickly zooming all the way back out to issue artillery fire that covers the span of the map, and then zooming back in to adjust the height of your choppers to keep them from being spotted as they try to drop forces behind enemy lines. The mechanics and systems in this game are numerous and compelling, asking you to consider armor thickness on different sides of different vehicles, switch between ammunition types under various circumstances accordingly, worry about accuracy drop over range, little hills that block line of fire, radar systems on vehicles, radar systems on ordnance, recon abilities, stealth, positioning, cover. Though it's all overwhelming at first, it's an absolute dream when you start to figure it all out, and there's no feeling like it. You can build decks from greater selections of units, and these decks determine what units you'll have available in games against other players or against the AI, where you'll go from 1v1 all the way to 10v10 to duke it out over key control points across huge battlefields, or alternatively, you can play with pre-built scenarios known as operations, or further still, you can play Army General mode across a few different scenarios where you'll control a preset selection of battalions on either side of the war, moving them around on the turn-based campaign map to plan engagements, and then fighting said engagements in real time on the massive battlefields mentioned earlier. This mode can also be played multiplayer, cooperatively, or in versus mode, and it's an absolute blast. WARNO is a fantastic game, and at this price point, I can definitely recommend picking it up, especially if you don't mind being a little overwhelmed at first for the sweet reward of learning a complex game.
Foundation is currently 25% off, sitting at around $22.
Barreling towards its 1.0 release as a medieval city builder with an interesting blend of organic city building and modular monument planning, and a lot more depth than first meets the eye. You'll place key buildings and zones and watch as your people carve paths between them, seeking out the quickest routes and establishing their own optimal approach to living in the city you're designing for them, often leading to unexpected results that you then need to integrate or willingly ignore. This one-step removed form of city planning felt very fresh when the game first released into early access, and there remain very few games, if any, that can replicate the feeling as well as Foundation does. But while there's the organic approach on one side, a more rigid monument planner allows you to build cathedrals, castles, and other major monument-style buildings using modular pieces to design your own grand display of strength and wealth, committing resources as needed based on your instructions. But there's more to Foundation than that. You'll be managing different strata of society, taxing them, and trying to fulfill their needs, while also keeping an eye out for external factions and any demands or requests they might have of you, providing you various benefits in return for your services. You'll make all kinds of complex production chains to sate needs at home and away, and as the game prepares to launch into 1.0, presumably sometime next year at this point, you'll see more new features, buildings, biomes, narrative content, and more coming. Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader is currently 40% off, available for just about $30, and this has got to be one of the most impressive CRPGs I've played in recent years, providing an impressive, immersive, and truly immense experience. Prior knowledge of the Warhammer 40k universe is not a must, as the game introduces you to all the core concepts you need to know before throwing you into a star sector spanning space opera that involves treachery, aliens, heresy, and at the center of it all, your custom-made Rogue Trader character. Being a Rogue Trader is a position of great power and privilege, and you'll find yourself not just caught up in a web of narratives, but also engaging in managing a massive trade empire. Beyond the isometric exploration and turn-based tactical combat, here you're managing planets, developing their industrial capabilities, managing special shipments, building relationships with other trade guilds and factions, seeking opportunities for better equipment, and doing much more besides. It's all fairly streamlined. The game never evolves into a full-on strategy game, but it gives you just enough to manage, if you so choose, to get an extra edge as the story progresses. The cast of characters are all interesting, both in and out of your party. The enemies and combat scenarios you find yourself in are all great fun, with combat being extremely intense and visceral. The game also uses rumors as an interesting way of kicking off side plots that you can choose to engage with, especially if you find the rumors compelling. And overall, Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader does things I've never seen any other CRPG even try to do, and it does them well. There's plenty of playtime in this game, and the fact that it embraces a system so different from D&D and Pathfinder makes it all that much more interesting. And yes, I am a little biased as a big fan of the Rogue Trader and Dark Heresy tabletop RPGs, but in my humble opinion, they were excellent on tabletop, and this is a magnificent adaptation, well worth full price, let alone the current massive discount. Expeditions Rome is currently just around $15, which is an absolute steal of a price for this wonderful historical isometric RPG that sees you play as a Roman noble that's been sent away from home in the interest of your own safety. Political intrigue at home has put you and your family at risk, and you must find your place in various military campaigns across the Roman Empire before you stand a chance of returning home safely. There are a plethora of things that Expeditions Rome does unlike any other RPG, and it does them well. Combat consists of a few different types of action points, for example, each with their own purpose and set of uses. Equipment determines the kinds of actions available to a character beyond their class and skill tree choices, and the injury system applies a palpable level of pressure as they can escalate if left untreated, making long marches threatening in a way most RPGs don't bother with. And this is only a handful of the noteworthy elements here. There's plenty more I could highlight, but these in particular make combat feel very different from the norm, and as a result impacts the entirety of your approach. Then there's the strategic map layer that has you running around various parts of the Empire, engaged in massive campaigns, leading legions into battle, but also engaging in character-driven side quests for your party members, coming across various happenings in the cities and towns littered around the map, and even pursuing improvements to your war camp that gives you access to additional party members, equipment, abilities, and more. Mechanics aside, the characters are all interesting, the story is wonderful, and the game looks gorgeous to boot. I'm a big fan of Expeditions Rome, and at this current price point especially, I'd say it's an absolute must-buy. Age of Wonders 4 is currently 35% off, available for just about $30, and you'll have heard me recommend this game a handful of times already, and it just keeps getting better and more worth picking up. A fantasy 4X game with heavy RPG elements and turn-based tactical combat, this was hands down one of my top games of 2023 as a result of its powerful faction customization mechanics, the series' typical combination of strategic and combat layers, and just the sheer amount of variety on the table that leads to a great deal of replayability. You can select one of the handful of pre-generated factions to play as if you prefer, or you can build your own faction from scratch, choosing from a variety of species, traits, cultural norms, social traits, so on and so forth, that all determine that specific faction's strengths, weaknesses, and overall playstyle. Then, you choose a set of tomes to start with, and to me, this is where the magic truly lies. Not only because the tomes literally determine what magic your faction will have access to, but also because the tomes you choose to start with, and the ones you opt to unlock over the course of any single campaign, will make a huge difference to how a faction feels in any playthrough, compounding or butting against the decisions you made across the rest of the process. These tomes act as tech trees, giving you access to thematically appropriate buildings, units, and spells, with the latter ranging from combat spells all the way to spells that fundamentally change your species' biology and, subsequently, their capabilities. Each of your decisions will also impact various events that crop up over the course of a campaign, not to mention that there are a variety of victory conditions and narratives to pursue, even on the procedurally generated maps. There's no feeling quite like customizing a faction to such a degree, hiring heroes and leveling them up and equipping them to lead your armies, and then engaging in turn-based tactical battles with said armies, all in one game. Age of Wonders 4 really scratches an itch that very few games can, and I highly recommend picking it up, especially at this price. Victoria 3 is currently 50% off, available for just about $25, and though the game sits at mixed reviews on Steam at the time of this recording, I think it's worth noting that the rating comes from a very specific set of hopes and expectations for the game that the developers were never really looking to hit in the first place, and they come from a time well before a bunch of updates and improvements had been put in place over the years since launch. If you accept the premise of the game where the developers wanted to make something fundamentally different from its predecessor, then Victoria 3 is a really fun ride that pursues goals that most grand strategy games don't even bother exploring. Victoria 3 is a game about building a society in an era of great change. Technological, social, and economic upheaval is the flavor of the era, and you can choose any one of countless nations, enterprises, and political entities around the world in an attempt to make your mark and rewrite history. Regardless of what you'd like to attempt, it all boils down to managing the people across various strata of your nation, ensuring the right ones are empowered and well taken care of to influence the political climate and pressures within your nation. You'll manage production and trade, you'll broker deals across borders, and you'll even dip your toe into the occasional war in order to secure goods that your people fancy. It would take me an entire hour to describe what makes this game tick, but if you're looking for a strategy game that's more focused on socio-economic and political matters than it is purely on warfare, then this is probably the only game that does so in any substantial and meaningful way, and it's been constantly updated since launch, with a particularly impressive free update having only just released alongside a new piece of DLC. I thoroughly enjoy Victoria 3, understanding that yes, it was trying to be something different from Victoria 2. So keep that in mind, as I do recommend it for people who are looking for something extremely unique. I can highly recommend picking it up, especially at this price point. Before we move on to my next two recommendations, I'd like to remind you that outside of the channel, I am affiliated with Hooded Horse, the publisher of the next two games I'm about to mention. This affiliation is not a sponsorship, and I do not get paid to talk about or recommend their games on the channel. It only exists because I really like the games that Hooded Horse publishes in the first place, so it only makes sense that I'd recommend their games from time to time. I always like mentioning this affiliation exists in the interest of transparency, even if it doesn't have any impact on what happens on the channel, but for more details, do check out the video I've linked in the description down below. With that said, Cataclismo is currently 35% off, available for just about 20 bucks, coming in as a siege defense game with very, very unique building mechanics. There's a single-player narrative mode as well as a few other game modes to try that let you experience the game's core mechanics on different biomes in a few different ways, including a skirmish mode where you play until you win, and an endless mode where you play until you lose. The latter pits you against wave after wave of endless horrors, rewarding you points at the end of every wave, with which you can acquire more advanced options to help defend your settlement as things get tougher and tougher. Regardless of game mode, you'll build up your base, explore a vast map to secure additional resources, and then brace yourself for nightly attacks from horrors that seek to destroy everything you hold dear, using real-time strategy controls to order your units around, position them appropriately, and hope for morning to come. That build up your base aspect of the game is where things truly shine here. Not only are you putting down buildings to help generate resources or recruit units or provide housing, but you're actually putting down individual blocks of wood or stone to create custom defensive structures as well. While you can pop down blueprints from prior experiments or as shared by the community, you can also shape your own multi-tiered towers, walls, and kill boxes, complete with banners and merlins and more to help bolster your troops' capability. Each kind of unit performs best from different heights, so creating tiered defenses is a necessity, and you can use the magic of physics to create traps as the enemy works to destroy support structures that can bring heavy stone sections tumbling down from overhead. It's a very clever system that feels Lego-like in many ways, and unlocking new options and revisiting old defensive weaknesses is a lot of fun here. Not to mention these very same building blocks can be used to help with exploration as well. Resources also need to be physically moved from where they're acquired to various warehouses, and you can use these building blocks to make shortcuts and more navigable paths as well. It's a really interesting system. I've never quite seen siege defense done like this, and there are some truly magnificent structures that can be built using the in-game system, so even if you just want to play for the sake of building cool castles, there's something for everyone here. Norland is currently 35% off, available for just about 20 bucks, and it's a fun blend of RimWorld and Crusader Kings 3, putting you in charge of a royal family in a medieval setting and asking you to build whatever legacy you can in the face of fraught relations, foreign invaders, and political intrigue in the power vacuum left behind by a fallen empire. Having released just earlier this year, Norland has received a plethora of updates, including one most recently that made the world map significantly larger while introducing additional character-centric systems and mechanics, including guests that can visit your city and bring about new kinds of shenanigans. While many aspects of the game will feel familiar for fans of colony management games, there are some things that Norland does quite differently. Putting you in direct control of nobles, you'll have to keep an eye on the needs and wants of the peasants out of your direct control, while also managing the mood swings of said nobles who might decide to turn to kidnappings and assassinations if left upset and to their own devices. Adultery, royal weddings, fratricide, patricide, international alliances, religious tensions, banditry, rebellions, and betrayal across borders, all these and more will see you leading armies, spearheading negotiations, and ultimately duking it out to make your mark on history. The character relations and storytelling potential here is immense and well worth the price of admission, especially on sale. There you have it, folks, some great deals from this Steam Autumn sale that are well worth taking your wallets out for. If you found something you liked here, consider hitting the like button or perhaps sharing this video with your friends, and if you have any recommendations of your own, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comments down below. With that said, as always, a massive thanks goes out to all of the channel members and patrons who've been supporting the channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly. And of course, a big old thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Until next time, cheers.